So, okay, so we're debating two things.
Yep.
The first one is Christian nationalism, and the second one is does God exist?
Ooh.
Okay, so do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Christian nationalism is bad because the Bible is flawed and is open to too many interpretations to be reliable.
Okay. Well, that is only in the case of a theocracy, which is different than Christian nationalism. A theocracy is when a king or queen, so like a monarchy, were to, like in the case of England, claim that their power came from God. So if your argument is that there's too many interpretations of the Bible and one person could have a flawed interpretation of the Bible, then that would be an argument against a theocracy, which I don't think is a good thing. But Christian nationalism is different than that, because Christian nationalism would, it's more of a category, but ideally, in my opinion, it would be a democracy.
Alright. So then, if it's just based on Christian values, that means that you have to have a large Christian population, which means that if you wanted more people to come into your society, like Muslims, Jews, all that stuff, like if you don't agree with their religion, they still have power to vote you intend for your society to be decided by Christians because you believe Christians have the best values. So if other people come in and taint that with their differing views just because they have differing religions, like you would have to ideally you'd want to keep those people out, or you'd have to convert them to Christians to think like the rest of you.
Okay. Let me just ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
When do you think the peak point of the U.S. was?
Probably late Cold War.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Well, I think it was more toward the beginning. And fun fact...
So beginning of what? Cold War or?
The beginning of the nation.
Alright.
Fun fact, actually, the United States, before there was even a term for Christian nationalism, before Christian nationalism was even a thing that existed, most states, to serve in government, you'd actually have to make a pledge of faith and say that you were... For different states, it was different denominations of Christianity. Like, some of them were Puritan, some of them were Lutheran. But it was like 10 out of 13 of the states or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it was most of them that would require a pledge of faith to serve in government. And I think that worked pretty well.
Alright, well there were also slaves, women had no rights, children were working in factories. So you want to equate that to the U.S. being great?
Not toward the beginning of the nation. Toward the beginning of the nation, before the big slave import from Africa, when the people were just settling from England, it was just the original 13 colonies, like maybe after the Revolutionary War. Slaves weren't, of course they existed in America, but they weren't as big of a rampaging problem as they were before the Civil War.
Even if they weren't widespread, it's still, no one was really against it back then.
That's
so,
true.
If we lived in a society where you could just go and rape whoever you want, and, it wasn't a massive problem, but a few people were still doing it, is that okay?
No, and I'm actually glad you brought up that point. If we lived in a society where rape was considered socially acceptable, that doesn't make it good. Like if slavery was socially acceptable back toward the beginning of the United States, that doesn't make it good. And I'm sure you've heard this before, this is commonly quoted, but actually, even though Christians did have slaves pre-Civil War, they were actually the ones who started the abolition movement. And I'm sure you've heard that before, but and slaves were a much bigger problem, especially in other places of the world that didn't have any Christians. Like in Africa.
Yeah. Well, also, there wasn't really the supply lines to have trades yet, because they were still developing trade infrastructure. They still needed more ports and more ships to be able to even start that in the first place.
Yeah. That's true. But toward the end of, like, the first, I guess you could call, like, the age of the U.S. between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, that's really when slaves were still popular back then. And toward the end, they did have the ships to deliver them. And they did have slaves. And then, once it became a big enough problem, that's when they were abolished.
Well, it shouldn't have to be when it becomes a big enough problem. I feel like it should be preventative instead of reactive.
Yeah, I agree. But that's not how most things work in government.
Yeah.
If crime isn't a big problem, then probably the police, there's not going to be very many police.
Good point. But that's not exactly what I'm saying. There's a difference between having the capabilities to prevent something and actually trying to prevent it. Because if you didn't have a lot of police around because there wasn't a lot of crime, like, if there was suddenly a lot of crime, you'd have to move a lot of resources to combat that, to get police out there. Versus if you see that there's a problem like slavery, that's clearly immoral. But if you see that's a problem, but it's just not widespread enough for it to be a big deal yet, like, you could cut that, or you could, like, cut the bud before it fully blooms.
Yeah. The distinction here is that in the time before the Civil War, obviously slavery was still legal. So their only option to combat that was to start the Civil War.
Yeah. Well, also, the South, which was where most of the slaves were, pretty sure a lot of those were and still are very Christian. So.
Well, back then the entire nation was. And they are today. Today they are, well, it's because there are a lot more conservative states.
Yeah.
And they tend to hold on to traditional values, which include both Christianity and maybe some racism and slavery, wanting to go back to how it was. So that I feel like that's irrelevant to the point of the fact that they're Christians, and more just the fact that they aren't as well developed and they've resisted the acceleration of society.
Alright, well, if the acceleration of society is, like, better, it makes us more moral, then why is it that conservatives are usually Christian and progressivists are usually atheists?
Okay. That's not always true. And I think that the point I'm trying to make here is not that those people are... Well, those people specifically are Christian mostly because of their society and because that society is very conservative. And it's traditional to be Christian in this country. But I don't think that... what was I saying? I don't think that those two strains are inherent to each other. I think that you can be... And there are a lot of progressive Christians. And I think at a certain point, I don't think that's a good thing, but that's another topic. I think that we need to have it in moderation, and I think
Progressivism?
Huh?
Did you say progressivism is something that we need to be more moderate about?
Well, we do need to progress in a sense, but what's happening right now in society is a new level of progressivism, where we're progressing instead of technologically and scientifically, we're progressing beyond morality. And I think for most of history, morality has come from religion, And the morals that this country was built on are Christian morals. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, also saying that it's all Christian morals, like, I'm pretty sure anyone, regardless of whether or not they're Christian or atheist or Muslim, is going to say that murder is bad, rape is bad, stealing is bad.
Well, that's just the obvious ones.
So what about the less obvious ones? What can a Christian say is bad, but an atheist won't say is bad, and why the atheist would be wrong?
Market regulations.
Well, that's not really a Christian versus atheist thing. That's more a left versus right thing.
That's true. But I think that it has... well, yeah, you're right.
So I think morality doesn't come from religion. It's just that it happens to be a very powerful weapon to teach morality politically.
Yeah. I think that what's happening right now in America is, since more people are becoming atheist and more people are moving away from religion, since religion is so fundamentally intertwined with our laws and our Constitution, because it was formed on, even though it wasn't directly stated to be religious, it was formed on religious morals. So because people are moving away from religion, we're moving away from those same morals that the country was founded on. And we're not building up. The left is more breaking down those laws that are inherent to this country.
Alright, well, would you say that segregation laws, tearing those down is bad because the country was built off segregation?
No. I think that the country was built off hardworking people, and in some cases those hardworking people were slaves. And that's just a fact we have to deal with. And there's nothing really we can do about that. The whole country's already built.
I mean, it hasn't stopped building. We're still building it with Mexicans and more non-Americans. Mm-hmm. They've kind of replaced the role of black people in society. They take low-paying jobs to do jobs no one else wants to do, like construction, plumbing, being an electrician, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's not inherent to the fact that they're Mexican, though.
Well, it kind of is, because historically they haven't had the same rights as us. Like most illegal immigrants, the reason most immigrants are illegal is because they can't safely wait the 20 years it takes to get, I don't know the exact number, but to become a citizen in the United States and to not get sent back to their home country. Like, it's just not a safe environment to be down in Mexico. To have to wait that long, so they have to come up here, and they can't legally get a job, so they get under the counter paying jobs, so that they don't get found out that they're illegal, but they still have to make money for their families.
Okay, actually, let me stop you right there for just a second.
Yeah.
Most of the countries that they're fleeing from are from South America, but most of them are fleeing from countries like Venezuela, Argentina, in some cases Cuba. They're sailing to Florida. But Mexico is a relatively low percent of the immigrants fleeing to the United States. So the information I glean from that is that compared to those farther south countries, Mexico is relatively safe, and they're just coming to America because it's more safe. So
we're always talking about the American dream. We're the most powerful country. We're the richest country in the world. And if we're just so blatantly saying that, why would we not expect more people to come here? And Mexico is not safe by any means. There's so much cartel stuff going on down there that the government isn't doing anything to stop because it's being corrupted by said cartel.
And I think the main problem with border crossings is not the people who are just looking for the American dream. It's mostly those same cartels bringing drugs.
Well, I think if they wanted to bring drugs here, I don't think stronger border protection is going to stop them, because they have tanks, they have like a lot of manpower and firepower.
So does the U.S. The U.S. has much more.
Well, we have much more.
You think if a cartel tank rolled up to the border, we wouldn't stop it?
I mean, I think it'd be pretty hard for like random border security people to just stop a tank. But
you don't think we'd send in the U.S. military?
We'd send in the U.S. military, but still, like, they have a lot of power. It's still pretty dangerous and hard to stop them.
This is all hypothetical. None of that's happened. Okay.
And even then, they could still send legal people here as mules.
Well,
so
there's a lot of... The whole argument between immigration is that Trump's trying to make it harder to cross the border, legally or illegally. He's making the requirements for legal immigration higher, and he's making the strength of the Border Patrol to protect us from the illegal immigrants. He's making that strength higher. So is the thing you take issue with us protecting our civilians from the illegal immigrants, or is the thing you take issue with raising the requirements to become a citizen and immigrating here legally?
I think the fact that we're making it harder for people to come in legally is an issue, because the country is built off of immigrants. Everyone who has ever made this country great has been an immigrant. The white people from Europe, the blacks from Africa, and now the people from South America, they're all immigrants. They weren't from here, and they're still making our country great and what it is today. And we wouldn't be where we are, or nearly as powerful as we are, if we were all just like Native Americans hunting bison still.
That's true.
So I don't think that we should just like remove something that's so like prevalent in our history just because the people now are greedy and want to keep all of our resources to ourselves. I think we should...
Just because it was good in the past doesn't mean it'll be good now.
Well, what has changed?
What has changed? A lot has changed. Just like we were just talking about slavery. The country's already built up. Most of the jobs that they would be taking are construction jobs, but those are running out. They are also taking some of our jobs, and they're making the prices, or they're driving our wages lower because it's a lot easier to find a worker now, right? Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think the problem isn't that wages are dropping too low because of the immigrants. I think that's just a failure of the corporations that are paying the people, because they're making billions upon billions of dollars in profit every year. So why can't they pay their workers a fairer wage?
Yeah, I agree. But it's a matter of competition. It depends on how our economy is doing. If there's a lot of people, then it's going to be hard to get a leg up in society. But if there's...
Okay, then. Well, I think the solution to that would be government jobs, so we don't have to rely on greedy corporations who are paying lower wages for things that paying lower wages for dangerous jobs. So I think, like, for example, because you're saying that the country's already built up, but we're still severely lacking on transportation infrastructure because we live in a huge country. I think that if we started building more railways, that could open a lot of jobs for many people, unskilled and skilled. That would really like help our economy. So I think the government should maybe take on the task of helping solve the problem of lowering jobs. And I think that it's only benefit society if we spend taxpayer monies developing local infrastructure.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think there's other steps we can take that isn't just, oh, the immigrants are driving down wages. Like, we can still do something to fix that.
But if we think of labor like a resource, jobs like that are a limited resource. And if they keep coming into our country, because they are an unlimited resource, then they will deplete that limited resource fast.
So what? We have more people building railways and making transportation and dropping prices because now the country's more connected and can transport more resources like to different places.
Well, the transportation prices in our country aren't really within the country. The problem with the prices are international prices.
Yeah, well, I think...
And I guess that kind of leads us into our next topic, which could be tariffs.
Okay. I think that the tariffs could have worked, but we're just doing a really bad job at handling what they're doing. Because if the main goal really was domestic investment, then I think like the trains thing would be really good. Investing in public infrastructure to make our domestic industries a lot more powerful than they already are would like probably do great for our economy, and we wouldn't struggle as much. But also that kind of goes against our like America as the police of the world, because we're always like stopping. Let's point out the evil as communism, right? We're always going around the world fighting communists, making sure that the Russians don't like get a hold of the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're taking on that responsibility, I don't know why economically we should be receding from that if we want to strong arm like the world.
Well, our strength is in our economy, but it's also in our military. But we don't really have... I mean, what we're doing right now with the tariffs is we're exercising that control.
Yeah.
We are using the tariffs as a bargaining chip.
Well, why should we have to use a bargaining chip? That's like if your parents are like taking away your wallet so that you do the dishes, you know? Or no, not that.
What's wrong with that?
No, I need a different example. That's like if your parents like took your wallet and said you had to walk to school instead of them driving you to school. Like, yeah, I guess you could do that, but why would you? That's just not great for the child's time.
I don't see the correlation.
Well, because, like, the other countries that have to... Or because we're using tariffs, which are, like, not doing great for other people's economies because we're the largest importer in the world. We buy everything. So all the countries that relied on us buying stuff from them, now they have to transition their economies to be more domestic to make up for the fact that we're no longer buying from them. So like that's the parent, like, yeah, you could walk to school, but why would you when your parents are right there and they could just take you?
Okay, I see that.
Unnecessary adjustment.
Well, we wouldn't have to... The metaphor that you used there doesn't really fit perfectly, because we are all also using it as like a punishment, I guess.
Well, why should we punish our allies? Like, I get we're putting tariffs on China because they're our enemy and we don't really want to associate with them. But what about the European tariffs or the ones in South America?
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, that just doesn't really make sense.
I
and
think
China too. Honestly, I think the tariffs are actually worse between the two of us, because even if they're our enemy, I don't really see a reason why we should want to keep them our enemy, because the friendlier we are with all the countries around us, the less wars go on, the better we can all like cooperate and stuff. So I just don't think tariffs work for anyone, because that means that we're telling the world that we're going to be less cooperative, even though our entire history has been helping people out for the past 100 years or so.
That's true. And honestly, I don't agree with a lot of the tariffs that we've sent to our allies. I do think we should tariff our enemies more. So I feel like to an extent we agree there. But I do think that... I do kind of disagree with you about us trying to turn our enemies into our allies, because there's a reason that we're enemies with China.
I mean, it's all just communism.
It is the constant battle between communism and capitalism.
Honestly, I think that the fact that because China's a pretty mixed economy, there's still millionaires and a lot of rich people and corporations working there, so they're not substantially different from us. Like they're pretty different than the United States, but they still have a lot of capitalism in their culture. and like a lot of consumerism, just like we do. So they're not too much different from us. That they're basically like aliens.
They are different, but you're right. Over time, like after the Soviet Union fell, they have drifted a little bit closer because there's just not that stability and, I guess, global acceptance of the existence of communism. It's become more of a taboo, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's probably why they've drifted a little bit away from it.
I mean, we can either look at this from an America First perspective or a globalist perspective. And I think historically, America follows the globalist perspective versus our modern take of the American perspective.
You think historically they have?
Yeah, historically we've been more globalist. We've been trying to cooperate with with other countries, and like.
Okay, so we got cut off there because my phone died.
Yep.
But I kind of remember where we left off. So I was saying economic globalization. Historically, America has not believed in economic globalization. And I don't think that economic globalization is possible because of the nature of transporting goods. So I don't think economies can completely combine because there is going to be some sort of buffer based on transporting the goods from one country to another.
Yeah.
But based on like ideals and culture, I think we should globalize that. And that's leading me to my first verse, which is my favorite verse and the verse I named my channel after. Matthew 28:19. Go therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So we should spread Christianity and our ideals and Christian nationalism to the whole world.
Well, I don't really agree on you saying that economic globalization isn't possible, because we are kind of doing it right now, or we were doing it before the tariffs. We had cargo boats and planes transporting goods all over the world, and like half the commodities you have today wouldn't be possible if we didn't trade with other countries. Like there's a lot of metals that come from Africa and Taiwan and all of those kinds of places, and computer chips, for example, that's also in Taiwan. We don't have the infrastructure to make the same quality computer chips as they do, and so we just wouldn't have as many computers if we didn't.
Do you know what economic globalization is?
When we cooperate with other people or other countries. What is it then?
Economic globalization is where the world has one economy and the entire world would trade based on the same monetary system, and everything's worth the same in every country.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's possible because we still have to trade goods with other countries. And
yeah, we are trading goods. Why does globalization mean that you can't have trade?
So one world economy would be inseparable from the idea of one world government. Would you agree that that's bad?
I mean, I'm not necessarily against a global government as long as it wasn't tyrannical. I think you want the whole world to be Christian, which means that you want everyone to like be God-fearing. That's kind of being ruled by one government.
Yeah, but I think that having a ruling world government is it would have to be tyrannical, because if one person at any point became in power over the entire system, it would be impossible to overthrow that person. So in the past, there's been
not necessarily.
There's been a rise and fall of global leaders, like Hitler, for example.
Let's look at it like this. Let's look at it like this. During the French Revolution, we had the monarchs who were seen as gods. They're like all powerful. They could do whatever they want. But then when all the people banded together, they were still able to take it down. That's kind of an that's kind of a weird way to say that the only way the entire world can be ran is by having one person in power. Like, I don't think there's ever been a successful system that's lasted other than like some empires, but that's kind of like Napoleon. But you wouldn't say Napoleon.
And that was in the whole world, though.
Yeah. Like, you can't really control the world with just one person. There's just too much to manage. So you'd have to split it up into like councils and like organizations.
Well, then you just have countries again.
No, it's not the same. Because if we had countries again, then we would have like rivalries like the United States and the Soviet Union.
Well, the thing about the United States, you have rivals between California and Texas.
Well, yeah, but they still are under the same flag. I don't think a world government would be much different than that. Like, they all have their differences, but ultimately they're all united under being humans.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that would be a great thing if we could just all agree on one thing like that. I think that would be beautiful.
So, and I think that thing should be Christianity. So we would disagree on that. But, so what I'm hearing from you is not,
well, the thing
is not economic globalization, it's political globalization.
Well, we still should have economic globalization because that would help us a lot with inflation in certain countries. Like Zimbabwe, I think $1 is worth like $2 billion of whatever money they have there. So if we had a global currency, stuff like that wouldn't happen and economies wouldn't be put in shambles just because a couple of dumbasses decided that they needed more money. I think it would be a lot more stable if it was grounded with the whole world.
So, would you say then that the transport of goods would be government subsidized? Like shipping fees? Because if one country produced a certain good and it was the only country in the world that produced that good, then everywhere else in the world besides that country, that good would cost more.
Well, yeah, but still, you could have other countries making said good. There's not... The only thing that keeps product in a country is if it's a resource. So let's say coffee, right? Let's say coffee. Coffee, you can only make it in like jungles. So Brazil, Vietnam, the other like smaller countries, Jamaica, I think. Like, you can only make coffee there, and you can't make coffee in the United States. That's an exception because that's like a natural resource.
Right.
You can't just put that
So.
over. But
it would be a lot cheaper in jungly areas to buy coffee than it would in, like, America.
Yeah.
Under that system that you're proposing.
I mean, that's basically... If we're saying that everything everywhere has the same price, that's also...
So economic globalization would say that it would cost the same everywhere. So that's why I'm saying it's impossible. Because they would have to ship it there.
Well, we could just improve trade routes. That's also
but that wouldn't lower the price. That wouldn't lower the price to zero.
It wouldn't lower the price.
Lower the price, but not to zero.
Well, that's also saying that
so it would have to be government subsidized.
That's also saying that the government basically controls who sells things. If we want to keep capitalism in, because you probably want capitalism, you probably don't want communism or socialism in your world. If we wanted to keep capitalism, then your company in Jamaica could sell their product for whatever reasonable price and then sell their coffee to America at a different price because that's capitalism, right? The companies control how the pricing is. So economic globalization shouldn't necessarily reject that.
That's what we have now, though.
Yeah, that's...
Because we have companies in Jamaica that are selling to companies in America.
Companies tend to be more globalist than countries. Because countries
are limited between borders, and
countries are limited by borders. Yeah, businesses aren't really bound by that, and it's more profitable to help other people out. And I think that we could take that economic system or economic principle that cooperation is better and apply that to politics. Because obviously, if we all help each other out, the world would be a better place.
So what I'm hearing is we just disagree under the idea of what everyone would be agreeing on.
Yeah, I think
so. I think that disagreement between you and I really demonstrates, because it would be nice, honestly. I would think it would be really good to have the entire world united under Christianity, but you would disagree with that. So the fact that we two disagree over what the idea that unites the entire world should be demonstrates that we can't have the world united under one idea, because not everyone's going to agree.
Well, I don't think my take on this is that something like religion is a far more volatile thing to unify the world over instead of politics or economics.
Economics is the most volatile thing.
Not really. If everyone used the same currency, I think that would be very helpful. We wouldn't have to worry about like trading money between economies, and that would just make the economy far more efficient.
So I understand how politics. I disagree, but I understand how you might think politics could be less volatile. But how would religion be more volatile? Because religion is based on. If you're having it united under one idea, it'd be united under one religion, right?
Yeah.
So it would be based on one set of codes, one set of moral ideals.
Well, so are you saying that we should have the entire world be Christian? Like, I assume that's what you idealize, but obviously you don't believe that we can have a perfect world like that.
I don't think it's possible now.
Yeah. So if we have everyone under the same principles of, like, be good to your neighbor, don't kill people, don't steal. Like, if we have principles like that, that moves more into politics rather than specifically religion. So I think we actually agree more than you think.
Well, there's more. It's more than just that. Those aren't the only rules. Those aren't
the only rules, but that sums up a majority of them. Like, basic human morality.
Yeah, basic human morality.
And then maybe some more really obscure things that might differentiate an atheist's morality versus a Christian's morality. But even then, like, I'm not sure most Christians would even be able to tell you what that very specific niche difference is in their morality, because you can't tell me right now.
Elaborate on that?
Because, alright, so there's probably a few things out there that the Bible says that isn't a popular idea, right?
Like head coverings.
Head coverings? Yeah. Does the Bible actually say something about head coverings?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It says that women should wear head coverings when they pray.
Yeah, I don't think
in the New Testament too.
Yeah, I don't think most Christians would know that off the top of their head, and also that's not really a point of morality. That's more just like principle, or that's more just like a practice for Christianity. So I think all the morality that we can extract from the Bible is already present in most people that aren't like insane.
That's true, but what about, like what we were talking about earlier with the colonies? If we had the world order united under Christianity, then there might be a profession of faith that you might need to give to get into a position of government. And that would be a problem for a lot of people.
That would be a problem. Like, you'd have to... Okay, so I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier on whether you think that we should unify the world under Christianity or Christian morals. Because as soon as we go into Christian morals, it essentially just boils down to basic morality.
I don't think... Well, yeah, a lot of Christianity is basic morality, but I don't think you can have Christian morals without Christianity, because once you remove the Christianity, people start to question the morals, and they have no basis to judge those morals on, because if they're not Christian, because if they were Christian, they'd judge those morals based on the Bible, and they'd see, oh yeah, they're fine. But if they judge the morals based on their own just ideas that they might have, and they see that one subject of moral, one moral might not fit their idea, then they might challenge that moral, and if everyone else in the society is atheist, they might just be okay with that, and we could end up having a society with less basic morals, because morals mean nothing if you don't have religion.
Well, I'd argue that isn't true because I'm an atheist and I'm not just going to kill you outright.
Right, but that's because of, well, that is because of your presupposed morals. But there is also some other more niche morals that are because of societal pressure. Like, a dog isn't part of your race. So, like, based on basic biology, you would work to protect your own race, right? So you wouldn't hurt someone of your own race unless you were insane and you killed someone. And but if you, like, hurt a dog, that's bad. But, and that's, I would argue that that's bad based on Christian morals. But those Christian morals have turned into societal norms. And because we have those societal norms, people don't see the Christian morals as necessary anymore. But without the Christian morals, the societal norms start to erode.
Okay.
Because they
well,
aren't...
This all assumes that God does exist, and He did send down a book from the heavens to teach us about morality. But if we look at this from a different perspective of, like, governments just trying to create religion so that we can have people fearing hell so they don't do bad things, then you could look at it through there and be like, we had morality already, and we were just using the morality of people who are more moral, which are like the royals who are more educated and know, oh, maybe stealing is bad, versus the peasants who are just trying to survive. Like, they don't really know what they're doing. So if we look at it from there, then yeah, Christianity derives morals, but it was humans who made those morals in the first place.
I disagree. And that's where we're going to fundamentally disagree.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get past that point. So I think we should go
are
on.
you just saying, you're basically saying that you have no faith in humanity, that people just can't make good decisions if they didn't have God? That's kind of a messed up thing to say.
I think that they can make some good decisions, but I think everything we do is just, well, I shouldn't say that. I think that the reason that morality even exists is because of God. So, yeah.
Well, if you look at it from this, let's say you're a species, if you evolve to learn not to kill your friends and not to steal their food so they don't die of starvation, then your genetics are going to be passed down, and people around you who are also moral, like, the moral people will more likely survive than the immoral people.
Yeah.
So genetically, we should have morality if there wasn't a God. So it's not like God is the only explanation for morality.
Yeah. But that's when you get into more biological morals versus more nuanced morals that by someone who...
Well, I'd argue that...
Like, is it wrong to steal a loaf of bread? Christianity would argue yes, but if it doesn't significantly harm the store you're robbing it from, then atheism could say, no, you're not significantly causing them any harm, so no, it's fine, right?
I mean, if you're starving and your children were at home and they were days away from dying because they haven't eaten anything in weeks, like, you're poor, I think the moral decision there is to steal from the bread shop owner that makes 50 times what you make in a year.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
And I actually think that the place we should get our...
I think that there's some things that we look at as wrong that aren't inherently wrong in some circumstances, which means that they can't always be wrong.
I think that's the place, and this actually leads into a good example of where Christian morals has an excellent place in society and is very necessary.
Are you saying?
Hold on, let me finish.
All right, yeah.
I think that person should go out and ask, and I think that any person who wasn't Christian and I think that any person that wasn't Christian and wasn't influenced. So I think that a lot of the Christian morals give us our societal norms. So I think that there are atheists who have a deeper moral compass, but it's because society has normalized our Christian morals. So a Christian would probably be more likely to give that person a loaf of bread than an atheist.
All right. Well, you can't just say that. Do you have any statistics to back that up? Because there's a lot of Christians out there that'll just say hatist, racist stuff online, but they still have a cross in their bio. So
that's true, and that's wrong.
Yeah, Christianity doesn't make you act a certain way. It's just kind of a guidance, and you can follow it if you want or not.
Yeah. I think that those people are LARPers and that they should take the cross out of their bio.
Well, don't you want everyone to be Christian? I mean...
Yeah, I don't want non-Christians to give us Christians a bad name. And I think those people should read the Bible. But I think that... I don't have any statistics, but I think that because we as Christians are more inclined toward loving our neighbor and being good to people, or at least the Bible is. Of course, not all Christians are like that, and I think that needs to change. I think that we need to teach more loving characteristics in churches. But I think that if you're an atheist, you don't really need to worry about that person. You can just kind of put it out of your mind, and I'm not an atheist, so I wouldn't know, but if I didn't have a God, I probably wouldn't give to that person if they were begging.
I mean, I'm going to be really nitpicky here. So not only do you not have statistics, you don't even have anecdotal evidence. So really, your support is just, supporting your argument is just, oh, the Bible says this, so that must mean that Christians must act that way. That's kind of a really weak argument, but that's just like me being like really picky about that.
Well, I guess the real point that I'm trying to get at is you'd agree that it's the right thing to do to give that person bread, right?
Yeah.
The Bible says to do it, so the Bible has good things in it, I guess.
Alright, so I guess the Bible can teach you that a hungry man needs bread.
Yeah.
But also, like, going back to that person that needs bread in order to feed their kids, like, stealing that bread, even though we normally think, because by law, stealing bread is a bad thing, but if you're starving, I think everyone in the world except for like a greedy billionaire who hates poor people would say that, oh, that person kind of needed that bread. They weren't really in the wrong for stealing it if it was to save their children.
I think that...
I mean, would you say that they should just starve instead of stealing?
I think that what this argument does is it separates the action of stealing the bread to save your family into two actions, or it separates the two, it combines the two actions into one action, sorry. The act of feeding your family is good, the act of stealing the bread is bad. And alternatively, not stealing the bread would be good, but not feeding your family would be bad. But I don't really see a scenario where you can't have both good outcomes happen. Like, and this is to another point about Christians being an important member of society, the church's job is to feed people. The churches have a few jobs. Their job is to preach the Bible. Their job is to give the sacraments. Their job is to feed the poor people. Those are the main three jobs. Obviously, they do other things, and it depends on what denomination you're in. But those are the fundamental things that they do.
All right.
And I think that some churches don't have those three things, but those aren't very good churches, and I probably wouldn't go to them.
Yeah.
So I think that the point I'm trying to make is that God cares for his people, and if you go to church, you will get fed. And I think that if someone's poor on the streets, and a church sees that, and they should do something about it, and often they do.
Yeah.
Every church that I've been to a few churches. Every good church that I've been to, actually 2 churches that I went to, didn't have a program for feeding poor people, and ironically, they were the churches that I didn't like for totally, completely different reasons. Which kind of demonstrates my point, right?
Yeah.
So the church that I go to regularly does. The church that I went to a while before that does. And a few churches that I tried out once or twice, those ones I didn't end up staying at because I didn't like them. And also they didn't have a program to feed the homeless or people.
Yeah. Well, my counter to that is that so churches serve in a world where we don't have the government helping people out. The churches do serve that purpose, but it shouldn't be the church's obligation in the first place because the government serves the people. So I'm a socialist, so my perspective on this is that the government should do its job in supporting its people. So I think we're both thinking that institutionally homeless people should be fed, starving people should be fed. Just the means that we think it should be done is different. And the government is just a far more powerful and efficient way to feed homeless people than the churches.
Here's where I think capitalism and socialism diverge from an original point, which was like the founding of the United States.
Yeah.
Because the United States had solutions for this, and it was the churches. Capitalism takes on the value that the government should care less about these people. And originally, this is what a lot of capitalists in modern day have kind of abandoned. And this is where capitalism gets dicey, but I do still stand by it because of what it was originally intended for. It was intended for churches to feed the people who didn't have enough money and were starving. And socialism saw that the society was becoming more secular and therefore churches were less powerful and couldn't feed people as much.
Yeah.
And they decided, well, let's build the government that feeds people because there's more homeless people and starving people.
All right, so let me question you on this.
So I think capitalism should stay, but I think it should go back to its traditional values of having religion hand in hand with that, because I think that socialism is an honorable idea, but I think that capitalism plus religion is better.
Okay, so I have one question on that. So you think, so in socialism, government directly serves to protect the people, then what is government under capitalism meant to do? What is the capitalist government designed to do?
Well, the capitalist government is meant to... honestly, the capitalist government is
it's meant to maximize profits. It's meant to make sure companies can be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, so it's meant to stay out of the way, kind of.
Yeah,
stays out of the way. And it can have some regulations. And there are regulations.
Even then, we still have government bailouts where we take taxpayer money to bail out companies that aren't doing well. Otherwise, the company would do. Yeah. So then, where's
but
the line there?
I don't think that socialism solves that problem.
I think it does. Okay, there's this.
Well, think about this. If
no, can I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just finish this up. So, I forgot it. you keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
So I don't think socialism solves that problem, because under socialism, those businesses that would be distributing whatever they're distributing, those businesses would instead be the government, right? The government would run.
Not necessarily.
Like if you have, I think of like New York, Zoran Mamdani's government-run grocery stores, you know.
Yeah.
So instead of having like a business grocery store, it'd be a government grocery store.
Well, that's not necessarily socialism. That's more authoritarianism. I think that's where there's a large misconception in what socialism is, because a lot of people see the Soviet Union as what socialism is in its purest form.
Communism.
When it's so far from that, because not only was the Soviet Union socialist, it was a little socialist. It wasn't really.
Well, it's the radical extreme of socialism. It's
not
communism.
It wasn't even communism, because if there was communism, then there wouldn't be a government. So, I think that's where the divide is, because in the Soviet Union, they followed more of Stalinism, which is authoritarian. It's really extremely authoritarian with some socialist principles, but it's not really emphasizing the socialism more than it's emphasizing the authoritarianism.
Well, it started with the communism, and then it developed the authoritarianism.
Not even. It was all Stalin's fault that it ended up so authoritarian. No one wanted. They didn't even. I'm pretty sure. Lenin. It was Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin. And when Lenin died, he's told everyone not to put Stalin in charge, but they still had Stalin in charge. And so that's why the country ended up so authoritarian, because Stalin had this vision where he
there wasn't any election.
Yeah, no, he just kind of seized power.
Exactly.
He had this vision.
Which I think is the problem with. I think communism is inherent to.
No,
I don't think you have an election in communism.
Yeah, you can. The whole basis of communism is democratic and working directly for the people, more so than democracy does. Because the only difference with Stalinism, or the only difference with the Soviet Union, is that it was born authoritarian. It never even had the chance to be democratic. And so when you look at it from there, like, yeah, socialism looks really
honestly
bad.
it was more like a republic, because originally the working class did rebel, and then Lenin came as just a prominent speaker, and the people lifted him up, like often how a republic does, like the United States.
Yeah.
Except once he became in power, obviously that was it.
No, he died, and then power went to Stalin because he pulled a lot of strings.
Well, Lenin was in power for a while, and then once he died, Stalin became in power.
I don't think he was in power for that long. Let me look it up.
It was a few years. You can look it up, but I think we should...
He was in power for about 6 years, until he died.
I think we should try to move along this conversation a little bit.
Yeah. Alright, so where do you want to go back to? Government responsibility versus church responsibility for who should feed the poor.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying with the communism thing, the whole point of that was to show that that from my perspective, from my socialist perspective, the government is just a way more efficient system to protect the poor than the churches, because the church can fluctuate in how many donations it gets. It doesn't have a consistent stream of income. It doesn't have the same authority.
In an ideal world, it would be consistent, because people would be going to church. But you're right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, even in the most perfect world, you won't have the same number of Christians every week versus the government. Everyone gets taxed.
If you think about it, it really is a perfect parallel, because what I was gonna say earlier is that the taxpayer dollars would go to government businesses instead of or government run programs instead of businesses, and the people would end up paying the same amount of taxpayer money than they would for bailouts to run those businesses.
Even then, the difference between a corporation getting them the money and the government getting the money is that since we live in a democracy, we choose who's in power of the government, and we choose who's using our money, versus a corporation, they can be whoever. They can be mega Hitler, and like they're still getting money because they need the company to be alive.
Yeah,
like
you can also vote for someone who would be less likely to support a business like that.
Yeah.
Not that we really have that many options.
Yeah, that's
right
a
now.
problem with the two-party system.
Yeah, I think that the two-party system is corrupt and broken, and we should not have a two-party system.
There's actually this idea where...
You know, George Washington said that a two-party system would ruin this country?
Yeah, I've heard that. And the reason why is this thing called, like, I think it's like the ratchet theory, where the Democrats act as, like, a thing, or act as, like, a stopping for a gear, and the Republicans act as the turning the gear. So when the Republicans go, they move the gear forward and make it more right-leaning and more fascist. And all the Democrats do is they just stop it from going backwards. They don't actually move it back to the center. And so that's why currently in America we barely have any options, and all the government is basically just right-wing now.
I think that, well, not always. I think that there have been times in history where the Democrat was the...
But it's been turning into that.
Where I think that there's been times in history where the Democrat has been the leading party. It really just depends on who's more popular in the public time. Like, I really, where I've seen that you've just said develop, during Trump's term, I would absolutely agree. It's been the whole entirety of America has been moving to the right.
It's been a shit show.
But I think that eventually it gets to the point where one side becomes too extreme in the eyes of America, or any country really.
That's the thing.
But it's especially... Sorry, let me finish really quick.
Yeah.
But it's especially good in America, because in America, since we have a republic, we don't have to start a revolution to end this extremism. So once we get to a certain point in extremism, then the country starts to over-adjust and goes the other way. And then once you get to a certain point on the other side of extremism, then it will start moving in the other direction. So, yeah, it's kind of like a ratchet, but just like a ratchet, it works both ways.
Not necessarily, because the change is happening so slowly that most people aren't going to realize it's happening, because most people are too busy on their job, their family, what their neighbors up to. Like, they don't have time to pay attention to how politics are going to see, oh, we're just moving more right, and I didn't even notice. Because, like, let's say the hair on your head, day by day, you don't notice it growing, but if you take a picture today, and then I showed you a picture of your hair in a year, it's going to look a lot different than it does today.
That's why we have conversations like this.
Yeah. Because, like,
because we have to recognize where our own party is wrong. And if I can't...
I don't even agree with the Democrats. I think the Democrats are part of the problem.
I think if you can't recognize a single flaw in your own political party, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Because that implies that you're just following word for word whatever your leader is saying.
Mm-hmm. That's the problem with a lot of politics these days. People just ask their community what to believe in, and people have stopped really thinking for themselves, and it's just like really trashed the whole.
If you see any problem with something that's coming from your political party, you shouldn't feel pressured to believe that thing anyway.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to believe it. I think that politics is the best when you're constantly looking at your system and figuring out how to fix it, like how to fix any problems you see when developing your theory for what you want for an ideal world. Because that's all politics is. It's just, what do you want the perfect world to look like, and how are you going to work to get there?
Yeah.
That's ultimately what politics is.
Yeah. But everyone has their own idea of what
Yeah.
a perfect world is.
Yeah.
You want to move on to the next topic?
If God's real? Yeah, I think we've talked about this enough.
Alright. I think God is real.
I think God is not real.
I'm going to start with the basics. And I actually did a video on this on my channel. I'm going to start with, you accept the universe is expanding, yeah?
Yeah.
You accept that if the universe is expanding, it had to be expanding from a point, yeah?
Yeah.
So that point is a singularity, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that that point was the beginning of the universe, or would you say that the universe is eternal? And if you would say that it's eternal, do you believe in oscillating universe theory?
I think it's eternal. I just don't think we have enough proof to use the beginning of the universe as a means of determining whether or not there's a God. Because one example I like using is back when we were living in caves, we didn't know that the stars were giant balls of gas, and we didn't have spaceships or telescopes to actually be able to go out there and like look at it for ourselves. So until we built the telescopes to be able to look at the stars more closely, we couldn't say whether or not it was like God poking holes in the sky or not. If we think of it like that. So I think that the cosmological argument is just too, like, you just can't really say if God was the beginning or if something else was the beginning. You can only look at what exists as a result of the beginning and be like, oh, God must have come from that, or oh, that's just the way the universe is. Nothing really said it to be like that.
Well,
and not to like shut down the argument, I just don't think there's strong enough ways. Because then instantly Christianity wins by default if we're just going by whose argument makes more sense.
So you're saying it's a God of the gaps?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about morality then.
Yeah, that's a great place to start.
Let's see. So what is love?
Chemical reaction in your brain.
Is that proven?
Yeah. When you have oxytocin in your brain, you love people more.
I haven't researched this. But what exactly does oxytocin do?
I mean, it's just a reaction that goes on your brain. I'm not a brain scientist. I can't tell you exactly what's going on there. But still, like, biochemical reactions, like your stomach dissolves food, your brain turns oxytocin into love.
But when you say love, what
love
exactly?
Love is just like electricity in your brain, making your brain electricity do certain things.
Okay, but where does that come from?
The electricity in your brain?
Yeah.
I mean, we evolved to have brains, and that's just how they've been functioning and how we've evolved brains to work.
Okay, but why is love evolved?
So that we can feel a certain closeness that makes us more cooperative with each other and to be able to reproduce.
Fair enough. Okay. I believe I've used this argument with you before. Why have we evolved to worship a god? Because historically every society has worshipped God.
So I think it's partially God of the gap, because we just need our best understanding of how the world works, and it's really easy to go to God, and we haven't really established rules for like debating if something's true or not until like a few thousand years ago. So we're gonna evolve with gods, or we're just gonna like evolve our civilization with gods. And I think the reason we have gods in the first place is partially God of the gaps, and also because it's really easy to control people if you threaten them with a hell.
Not every religion has a hell.
Not every religion has a hell, but the most popular ones do. Like Christianity, you have a lake of fire, in, I think, Hinduism, when you reincarnate and you've been a bad person, you turn into a dung beetle. That's kind of a hell.
Yeah. Okay.
And then even in other religions, like, it's not necessarily a hell, but I think in, like, Aztec culture, if you're a bad person, there's probably, like, a demon or something that eats you up.
In Aztec culture, they'd just kill you.
Yeah. So there's that too. But yeah, mostly it's just about, like, an easier way to control people.
So if you think about, Aztec is a good example. If they evolved to worship God to try to explain the universe, then where does a god that, and I would argue that this is a demon that they're worshiping, or that they were worshiping, where does a god that, in their opinion, wants them to kill a bunch of people on top of the mountain that literally turns the lake red on certain occasions, the entire lake that temple was built on. Why did they, in their minds, come up with, our God wants us to kill millions of people a day? Millions of people, not like hundreds of people.
Well, there's part of it that there's just crazy leaders that made them believe that. But also, if we look at the Old Testament, there's that one story, I forgot what the names were, but there is that guy who God spoke to him and said, you have to sacrifice your son on the top of this mountain for me to prove your loyalty.
I believe that was Abraham.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
He didn't, but still, like, that thought process came along that people would be willing to the idea to kill their own child just to prove their faith in God. So I think even being able...
Okay, so here's a question. Why did he stop then? If there is no God, then why did he stop? What caused him to stop?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's a story, right? Because, like,
yeah,
God told him not to do it. He came down and, like, stopped him from killing his son. Right? That's what happened?
So why did he stop then if there's no God?
It's a story.
Oh, so you don't believe it's real?
Yeah, I don't believe it's real.
Okay.
Or it's probably, like...
Fair enough.
It's either not real or it's, like, been so... Or it's been, like, so lost in history that you can't really prove it existed or not.
Yeah, I could see that argument a lot more with the Old Testament.
Yeah. Old Testament's, like, really funky because you have so many... Because God's basically his whole thing back then was killing people that opposed the Jews. And that doesn't really align with the New Testament, which, if God is eternally wise, I don't think he would make the same choices he did in the Old Testament if they didn't align with the New Testament.
I would disagree, because according to Christianity, God doesn't change because he's...
he doesn't change.
He's perfect. I would argue that the case is different there because the Jews were God's people back then.
Yeah.
And now everyone who confesses and believes in Jesus Christ is God's people. So nowadays, God wants to protect the Christians. And I think that God can intervene on earth sometimes in certain cases to protect the Christians. But back then, it was the Jews, so he would do whatever it took to intervene to protect those people. And
I just don't understand why he would go from...
In most cases, actually, it wasn't even God's doing. Like the Canaanites. The Canaanites, oh, I don't remember what the Canaanites did, but God told to... I haven't read this in a while. God told to one of the ancient Israelite tribe leaders that the Canaanites needed to be punished. Those were his words. They need to be punished.
Okay.
And that tribe leader went and massacred the entire Canaanite tribe. So obviously, I don't think that was God's will. I don't think that was what he wanted. So.
Okay, well let's take a different angle. So the story of Moses, which I'm pretty sure most Christians agree definitely did happen, where he unleashed his 10 or so plagues on Egypt.
Yeah.
Why would he go from completely decimating an entire civilization for enslaving Jews to during the Holocaust, the Nazis took quite a while until anything really happened to them. Really all of that was just human error that they lost, and it wasn't really God sending down meteorites to destroy their tanks. So I don't know why he
actually it wasn't an army. It wasn't any army that defeated the Nazis. It was the Soviet winter. So I guess that could be argued that it was God's will.
It wasn't even the Soviet winter, because that's mostly in the Soviets' territory. But actually making it to Berlin, that was all just the Soviets just grinding through, killing, just throwing people at the problem until it worked. So there wasn't even really a God's intervention that led to that. And plus, the Holocaust was a terrible atrocity. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. And it still happened for such a long time that's kind of hard to believe that God would just suddenly not care about his people as deeply as he did thousands of years ago.
Well, 2 points I want to make here. One, evil is not God's will, and God does not will evil to happen.
So then, the Egyptians and the Nazis are both evil, and they were killing Jews. So what's the difference?
Well, the difference is the second point I was going to make. The Jews are no longer God's people.
Well, they still believe in him, and they still pray to God, or they still pray to God and stuff like that. So they're still kind of his children, even if they're a little misguided.
Yeah, that's when you get into, there's two different families of Christianity on this matter. The ones that say that the Jews are still God's people, the Israelites are still God's people, those are the dispensationalists. And they believe that God gave mercy in two different dispensations, one to the Jews and one to the Christians, the Gentiles. And I think that is a flawed view because Jesus himself said that that wasn't true. He said that no one comes to the Father except through me. He said he rebuked the Pharisees, and they were the religious leaders of the Jews. And obviously a Jew could convert to Christianity and that they would be saved, but I think that it's not, I don't believe in dispensationalism.
Alright.
What else? There is certain matters of, well, actually we were talking about this earlier. The conundrum of stealing bread.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't really cause any issue for the business owner, but that person could still steal bread and they could feed their family. But most people would consider, because if you split this into two different acts, the one of feeding your family, the one of stealing the bread, most people would consider the act of stealing the bread wrong, even though the act of feeding the family is good.
Okay.
Even though it doesn't really cause any harm to the business owner.
Yeah. So if I worked honest 9 to 5, let's say being a garbage man, cleaning up the streets, that's good, honest work, right? So then what if I took the money that I made from that and funded a terrorist group? I was doing a good thing and then I funded a bad cause. So where is it just the actions is it just like the end result that matters? Because I feel like a bad end result is worse than a good end result with a bad, or with like a bad means of getting there.
I don't see what you're saying. Well,
So,
you're kind of missing the point. You're kind of missing the point I was trying to say.
Because ultimately, you stole the bread to feed your family, versus ultimately you worked an honest job to fund a terrorist group. I think the intention there matters a lot more than
the intention does matter.
Yeah. Than
and
the act.
as a worker who just works a 9 to 5, to the business, I mean, it depends on what business you're working for. But to the business, usually you're pretty disposable. You can just hire someone else.
Yeah.
But to the terrorist group, it matters a lot more. So, stealing the loaf of bread to feed your family, that's more of a moral conundrum. And I think that most people, I honestly think most people would say that that's good. But obviously, working a 9 to 5 to fund a terrorist group, most people would agree that's bad.
Yeah.
Even though the act of working a 9 to 5 and helping society is good.
Yeah.
So I guess the ends are
the means.
The
means
ends
justify the ends.
Societally, people would consider the ends the more important aspect, and also, I think it's important to note that if you weigh it on like how much of an impact it has on society, feeding your family, that could save their life. That has much more weight than just a loaf of bread that probably doesn't impact that business owner's life. And a 9 to 5, that probably doesn't impact that business owner's life because you're pretty much disposable. They can hire someone else.
Yeah.
But for the terrorist group, that probably would make an impact. So it also kind of depends on the impact. And just like I was saying earlier, you can separate those two actions. There's better things to spend your money on.
Yeah, obviously.
And obviously,
I would say like an objectively evil thing that you could use your money for.
Yeah, and I would say that there's better ways to obtain that bread to feed your family.
I still think that the ends justify the means in all scenarios. Where like what you do something.
All scenarios?
Yeah, all scenarios. Because there's a lot of objectively bad things that you can do that are ultimately better for society. So let's take a more extreme case. Let's take like a serial child predator. If you were to kill that serial child predator, then I think that that's a good thing. Even though that killing people is bad, you still did it to save more people than the harm caused. Because that pedophile's probably not got any family that relies on him or anyone that like he means anything to.
I think that we should lock that person up in prison. I don't, well, because the points you keep making depend on. I feel like it's the worst case scenario. Like, there's better ways to handle getting bread for your family. There's better things to spend your money on than a terrorist group. And I think there's better ways to deal with a child predator. I would say if it's the only way, then you'd have to.
Yeah, because what if they were in like a position of power where they probably weren't going to get arrested like they were a cop? Because like it's pretty hard to arrest a cop or like a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I think killing the pedophile there would be a just thing, even if killing is morally wrong.
Yeah.
So I think morality is entirely based on the end result more than the action that it took to get to the end result.
I think that again, this is a harder one, but again we have to split the action into two different parts.
Yeah.
One, the act of killing that person, and two, the act of depriving the world of a child predator. Killing is obviously bad. depriving the world of a child predator is good.
Yeah.
We can't just say, we can't just encompass the action in one action. We have to split it into multiple parts, because if you take the whole action at face value, it's not a yes or no. It's not a good or bad. It's a gray.
It's a gray, and that's where most action.
That's where most actions land. Yeah.
That's where most actions land. Where if there's a good on one side and a bad on the other side, then that's like, I think the gray area is a very important part of morality, because good thing you work or like raised money and you fed homeless people. That's a good thing through and through. You killed a person and take their wallet. That's a bad thing through and through. That doesn't really mean anything morally. I think that gray area... It's two different actions. Yeah, the gray area is a lot more important than the black and white.
Yeah. So what a lot of people do as these like thought experiments is they take two different actions and they frame it as one action. And they say, is this good or bad? It's neither, really. It's not a yes or no, because you're either tainting the good with bad, or you're tainting the bad with good, or you're adding good to the bad, I should say. So you have to take it in two different sections: the good action and the bad action. So if you're killing a child predator to deprive the world of that child predator, even though it's a gray and it's only one action, I still think we can divide it into two different parts, because of the fact that it's gray. I think that no gray areas can't be split into their smaller components that make them up, that are the good parts and the bad parts.
Yeah. I still don't think there's a scenario where you can say, or where the end result that's good can't justify the way to get there that is bad, unless it's like killing a person, stealing the wallet, and then like buying food or buying like a sandwich for a homeless guy on the street. That's just disproportionately.
Well, yeah, that's where you get to.
Yeah.
You're weighing.
I think that part.
You're looking at the weight of good and bad actions. And I think that if there was any way you could avoid those bad actions and still obtain those good actions, you should take that instead. Like I was saying, if you divide the child predator issue in two, if you could deprive the world of that child predator without doing the bad thing of killing them, then you should do that. If you could feed your family without stealing from a store, then you should do that.
So I think this one kind of just mostly applies just for the pedophile situation. But if you lock up a pedophile, they're not going away for life. They're going away for like under 20 years. Versus if you kill them, they're gone forever and they'll never harm any children again.
I think that child predators should go to mental asylums.
I mean, what's the point where you can let them out? Because what if they just lie? Because being a child predator doesn't mean you're like mentally retarded. It just means that like you like kids and like you could still be a really smart person and figure out how to get out of whatever institution you're using kids.
Mental asylums aren't just for well, I think child being a child predator and not only like being attracted in that way to children, but also acting on that is a form of like psychosis.
Yeah, but it's still kind of easy. If they were really motivated, they could probably convince someone to let them out and prove that they're doing okay now.
You could argue that case about any mental issue and any mental patient.
Yeah, so then do we just lock them up for life? Or which is not what we're doing right now. So I think that's like an area where we can improve society is if you're a repeated child offender. I think if you're a child offender or child predator at all, you should be locked away for life regardless of how severe your act was. Like if you're molesting kids, you're not fit for society in any world.
Yeah. I still think that, like, for a case of murder, that's not really a mental issue. That's a case of, like, extreme anger. Like, you get angry enough at a person that you want to kill them, and then you act on that. You kill the person.
It can be a mental illness, though.
It can be.
Yeah.
And those people, well, actually, a lot of time they're put to death row.
Yeah.
But
depends on the state.
It depends on the state, too.
Even then, like...
It depends on the case, I was going to say, but it definitely does depend on the state.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, in a lot of states, they would be sent to a mental asylum. And, like, if you can send someone to a mental asylum for murder, then you can send someone to a mental asylum for being a child predator.
Yeah.
Because I think that if someone can't be rehabilitated, then yeah, they should probably go away for life. But rehabilitation is really important. And I think that
I'd rather take
most people deserve a second chance.
Yeah, but I'd rather take the preventative measure of just never letting them out again, or even killing them, because, like, you're a Christian, so you believe in second chances and that God should be able to forgive anyone. But I think that there's just some things that I think that, like, there's two things that you can do that I just personally think can never be forgiven, and that is rape and child molestation. If you do either of those things, there's no way to justify that. Because being a murderer, if you kill a really bad person, if you killed Hitler, you're not a bad person because you killed Hitler. But if you molested a kid, there's no valid reason to molest a kid ever. There's no universe where that's a moral thing to do. And
well, that's why I would argue that it's a mental issue.
Yeah, so if they're mentally unfit,
if they're mentally, well, that's why in mental asylums, they have you, like, talk with a therapist, or I mean, maybe a psychiatrist, actually. The differences are small, but
yeah.
They have you talk with a psychiatrist, and that person's professionally trained and does it every day. They try to figure out if that person's still mentally ill, or if they can be let out soon. And if that person doesn't get better, then the psychiatrist will keep saying, yeah, that person's still mentally ill and we can't let them out yet.
Yeah, but there's also a chance for corruption. Like, what if the guy offers him $20,000 if he gets released? Like,
how's a person in a mental asylum going to be able to do that?
Well, like, if they have money, then they can be like, oh, if you let me out, I'll pay you a lot of money if you let me, for letting me out.
Well, second offenses are always more serious convictions, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and then, even then, though, we shouldn't have the possibility for a second offense in the first place. Because
I agree that
I think it's better to just lock people up for life than to risk another person. Okay, because you have your...
Well, what's the distinction here? Why can't... What's stopping you from bribing a guard to let you out?
There really isn't anything stopping you from bribing a guard from letting you out. So
what makes being in a prison different from being in a mental asylum? I think a mental asylum would be better than a prison.
Well, yeah, I think our prisons... Did I say that? Did I say that they should go to prison for life? Alright, I meant like mental asylum. I think we should, like, keep them locked away from society either way, or executed. Because think of it like this. You have your pedophile who's already molested a kid, right? They're already a bad person. You can say that objectively. So they've already done the damage to a kid or a few kids. So you lock them away, and then if you never let them out, that's the only person affected by that. Then you only have one person that's locked up for life, right? But if you let them out on the off chance that you think they've gotten better, but they really haven't, and they're let out and they molest a few more kids, you let that new damage happen, and now they're just going to go back into the prison system for longer, and they might even be let out again, and the same thing happens. So I just think that it's better risk management to just not let them out for an offense like that. Because you're only ruining one life if you keep pedophiling forever, but you can ruin 2 lives by letting him out.
But here's where you have to weigh the definition of ruining. Obviously I'm not advocating for child predators right now.
Yeah.
But any life is a good life. Any life is valuable. Because as a Christian, I think we should judge the sin and not the sinner. Judge is probably the wrong word there. Hate the sin, not the sinner. We still judge the sinner because they committed the sin. But I don't think that we should I have to be careful. I don't think that person's life is not less valuable. You're ruining that person's life more than you're...
Yeah. Well, if they're a pedophile, their life's probably already kind of crappy, and they're a crappy person. Versus an innocent kid, if you let the abuser abuse that kid, they're scarred for life, and that could affect their relationships, that could affect their opportunities, that could just do so much to ruin them, and they might even become abusers themselves because of that trauma. So really, keeping them locked up minimizes the damage far more than letting him out with the off chance that he doesn't commit anything.
I think in an ideal world, we wouldn't have corrupt psychiatrists, and we could just...
Yeah, we could just trust that they would.
Right.
They wouldn't let him out. Even then, you can't, we don't have brain scanning technology that can correctly identify if someone's a pedophile or not.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Because I do still think that those people deserve a second chance, but is their second chance worth the risk of sacrificing a child that they might attack's second chance?
Yeah.
But it's a risk. It's not a definite yes or no. It's an unknown factor.
Yeah, it might be case by case.
Right.
I think...
So,
to agree...
Case by case. I think that there isn't really a definitive yes or no answer whether we should lock them up for life or put them in a mental asylum. I think we should judge based on what exactly that person did.
I think that,
how bad their offense was.
Yeah. I just think that whatever thing you've done, or whatever abuse you've committed... I'm sorry. So, appealing to your side of this, you believe that God will judge people, and He can judge people perfectly. So maybe if we just lock them up for life, and give them the opportunity to be Christians, so that they have that opportunity in the afterlife to redeem themselves in God's image, I think that would work best from you as a Christian, and I think that would just be the more cooperative thing to do. If we as a society agree, we can let this person go to religion if there is a God, then we aren't ruining that chance by just killing them on the spot. So I think that's the most moral thing for society if we did that.
Yeah. So you're saying let them go to prison for life but no death penalty.
There could still be a death penalty because again, it's expensive to keep prisoners in prisons or
Yeah.
people in mental asylums.
It's also it's actually much more expensive to do the death penalty because they have to be held in prisons for a while, and they have to pay lawyers the entire time that's happening, and obviously there's a lot of legal activity involved in doing the death penalty. So actually holding prisoners for life is less expensive than just killing them.
Alright, so we can still keep them locked up for life then, if that's the cheaper option. Because I'm not against religion. I think it's, like, it's not a bad thing. It's comforting for people. It, like, helps with morality, and especially in early ages of civilization. So I think if we can use religion to bridge the gap so that we can all agree that this is how we should treat pedophiles, then that would make it easier to make this change to get this implemented.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got really off topic there.
Oh my god, yeah.
We were supposed to be
I think
talking about.
it's still morality though, because
Yeah.
if God exists, or this is like whether or not God exists, I think this is still an important discussion to make.
I think. Okay, here's another argument.
Alright.
I think that a person who's a pedophile or just doing any kind of bad thing, like you see, who's that one? I saw this Charlie Kirk video of that one porn star coming up to him and saying that she converted to Christianity and she's not doing that anymore. So you could say that that's a good thing, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, porn star isn't even like a bad thing. It's not really like immoral from like a human moral standard, but from like a Christian moral standard, I could see where you think that's a bad thing.
I would say that it is because it's harmful for the mind. It's degrading for the person who's recording themselves doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah, it's bad for their character, but also like going out in
it's-
public and yelling racial slurs is bad for the character.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, there's levels to it. I think that being a porn star is like the lowest level that there is of degrading the self. Because you're still making a lot of money. So you're still living a far more lavish life if you're successful.
That's not the part that matters.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was going to say is it's bad for the brain of the person who's consuming that media. And I think that one of the only ways that they can get out of that world is by converting to Christianity. And it's better for them, and it's better for the people who were watching them.
I think there was that one porn star, Sophie Rain, who started like a charity.
You know the name.
Yeah, because she's the biggest one. She's the biggest one, bro. Her name's on everywhere. But so like she started a charity that like feeds homeless people or something with the money that she makes. Is that not a good thing? That's also like thinking about like if
we're back to where we started.
If moral,
you have to separate it into two different parts. There's the act of doing what she's doing to fund that, and then there's the act of funding it. And one of them's bad, and one of them's good. So we have to weigh.
Astronomically better, in my opinion. Okay, but also think about it like this: what's your stance on if God was real? Would he judge people based on their morality or just solely on their Christian faith?
Faith, not works.
I think morality should be a way better benchmark on if someone's a good human and deserves eternal life than just being Christian.
Well, think about it like this. If God didn't forgive sins, then would there be any reason to go on not sinning if you were still a Christian and you sinned?
Well, just being a Christian on its own doesn't really mean anything, because again, there's those teenagers online that yell racial slurs with crosses in their name.
Yeah.
So those people probably don't repent for those actions, So are they still going to heaven just because they're a Christian?
Depends on what they make of their life after that, because usually it's a
So
phase. Usually it's a phase.
So then it's also part of your actions. So is faith,
it depends.
Is faith just like the enabler for the actions to matter?
It's faith. Can you phrase that differently?
Or like, is believing in Jesus Christ just the on switch that, okay, now whatever you do with your life, that matters on if you're gonna make it to heaven or not? Because otherwise they just go into purgatory for being good but not like.
Well, the Christian stance is that if you do good works but you don't have any faith in because Jesus is the one who saves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really a good standard, because if you think about it, everyone's sinned. That's the Christian stance, at least.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to agree with that. But everyone has sinned, and if Jesus didn't come, and even before, God would forgive the Jews, even in like the Old Testament. But when Jesus came, he forgave anyone who asked for forgiveness. And that's better because it expands the scope from not just the Jews, but to everyone else. But they had to ask for forgiveness, and if you don't know what you're asking for forgiveness for, or who you're asking forgiveness from, then you can't ask for forgiveness.
So what if you're born on North Sentinel Island and you just never have the opportunity to meet Jesus, or even know that Jesus exists, or that Christianity is a thing?
There is a doctrine called invincible ignorance. And there is questionable basis biblically, but the Bible says that God is just. So a lot of people, including me, think that those people can be saved because if God didn't give them any opportunity to believe and they just went to hell, then that would be unjust and therefore out of God's character.
Okay.
Which is the same reason why I believe that babies who either aren't born or are born and die like right away, like you were mentioning the other day about leukemia. You're just born with leukemia and you die, then that's it, right? No. I think that it would be unjust if God sent them to hell.
So then this ties back to, if they're exempt from it, what's separating a person? Because if you're like actively rejecting God, like you're just constantly telling Christians, no, your God isn't real and your whole belief is stupid, like I am, then but like you're still a good person in your life and you're doing good things, then yeah, I kind of understand, because like, but also like,
but that's different from what I was mentioning earlier with
what if you just like didn't have time in your life to worry about whether or not there's a God, so you just defaulted on atheism because you're too busy doing good stuff?
Well, that's where the doctrine of invincible ignorance starts to fall apart, because there really is no.
Too blurry.
It's a really blurry line. So I'd say if you're an atheist who has some semblance of an idea of God, it would be better to be a Christian, because I don't know if invincible ignorance would apply there.
Yeah, but that's also
if they have been exposed to the faith. And really, the doctrine, it relies on if they have had an opportunity to accept it. But yeah, it's a really blurry line.
Yeah, so I think that like that can't really be used as a way. I think that's a pretty big hit on morality for God. Because if he was truly moral, then he would base people, or then he would base whether or not people go to heaven based on their like actions, how good of a person they actually were to the people around them, how like good they were to their neighbors and stuff. I think that should be far more important than just asking for forgiveness.
Well, what if you converted to Christianity in the last moments of your life? Like, you,
I think that's pretty.
You convert to Christianity on a plane, and the plane goes down and it crashes and you die.
All right. So were you a bad person until that point?
Let's say yeah, just for this example.
All right.
You would be saved.
I think I heard somewhere that supposedly what happens if you just never heard of God before, or like you didn't believe of God at first, then he'll reveal himself directly to you and be like, I am God, do you believe in me or not? And then and then like if you say,
where'd you hear that?
I'm not sure, it was a long time ago. Is that true? Do people actually think that?
I haven't heard of anyone thinking that. I could see why people would think that though.
Yeah,
like, for example,
I think that makes the most sense.
Paul, who wrote the epistles, was never directly exposed to Christianity. He was a Jew who actually hunted down and killed Christians. And Jesus came directly to him while he was on the path from one city to another, and like blinded him for a few days, I forget, and then appeared to him afterward, and he recognized immediately that he was God, said, "Who shall I call you?" And he said, "Jesus Christ." So then he converted to Christianity. So there is a case for that in the Bible, that people who aren't exposed could get.
I think the basis for that should be if they're properly exposed. Because if you're born in a Muslim country, you're probably going to be a Muslim. So even though you kind of believe in the same thing as Christians, like just because you weren't born in a Christian country and like you chose Muslimism because that's like what your family believes in, then that's kind of an unjust way to determine if you go to heaven. So I think if God doesn't reveal himself to you and you just had to figure that out in your own life, that's kind of a really shitty way.
Yeah, I think that might have a case for invincible ignorance, but also, even in Muslim countries, there are Christians, and they have the internet.
But if they have because let's say Muslims were like the true religion, all right, just for hypothetical, and you were born in a Christian family, you're not gonna go and be like, hey, these Muslims are actually kind of convincing. I think I'm going to be a Muslim now. Like, I don't think you would do that, right? So
there are people that have, actually.
Yeah, some people.
With the other way around, Muslim to Christian.
Yeah.
But
like, you wouldn't go turn around to a Muslim because you're just like really into your own faith, and you probably wouldn't change that.
I am.
So I think that goes the same for them. I think we have to look through their shoes.
And I think that's where we have to get. And I think that's why intellectual Christianity is important, because we have to know why we believe what we believe so we can stand strong in our faith when we come to
like
adversity.
a little bit of theism on top of the faith.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
theology.
Hard. Yeah, theology.
So, like, for example, Muslims believe... Here, I can use one of my other verses. Muslims believe that Jesus was a prophet, and they believe in the New Testament, and they believe that that everything that Jesus said was true. And their belief relies, because they don't believe Jesus is God.
Yeah.
Their belief relies on Jesus not being God, because that's what Muhammad said, and Muhammad said that he was just a prophet. And they believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, that he's going to come back, and that when he comes back, he's going to die, because he's human, and he's not God. So I'll pull up, this one was the better one, if I'm remembering correctly.
Alright, we're back.
Okay, we are back, and I found the verse. I wrote it down wrong on the page, but it is right here. Yeah, John 10:30. I and the Father are one. So Jesus is God. So he said, I am the Son of God. I am one with the Father. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Yeah. So, that's why I think that Christian intellectualism is important, because if I didn't read that and analyze that, because we have to have a verse that says that Jesus is God. That defines our Christian faith. And Muslims have the opposite, because really the only thing that distinguishes Christians and Muslims is, I mean, obviously they have their Prophet Muhammad that we don't believe. But the biggest thing that Muhammad said that makes us recoil from that belief is that Jesus isn't God. And you saw it right there.
Yeah.
I and the Father am one. Okay. So that's why I don't think that Muslims' religion is true, because they believe what Jesus said, and Jesus said, I and the Father am one. So essentially saying I am God, but in a roundabout way. And he says that all throughout all four Gospels. The other verse I was going to look at was Philippians 2:5-8, which is where Paul says directly, unlike Jesus who says it kind of in a confusing way, that Jesus is God. And I think that Paul, because he never was there when Jesus was first on earth, is a little bit less of a... it's harder to take his word as when you're defending his, because obviously us Christians, we believe that Paul was important and that what Paul said was true, but if you're framing that based on other religions, Muslims did not recognize Paul's writings.
Yeah.
But if we can prove that Jesus said that he was God, then you can pretty much disprove Islam.
Alright. Well, you don't believe in the Prophet Muhammad, and they don't believe in that one part of the Bible. So, who's more valid in that stance? I still don't think that... the Christians and the Muslims are very grounded in their own faith. And there isn't really much that can change that. And part of the problem with that is if one of them's correct and the other isn't, and being the other is gonna get you put in purgatory or just not have a good chance at heaven, that's a little unfair because you were pretty much born into that, and they both have, if you're looking at it from a theistic perspective, they both have a basis.
Well,
That's
like what I
equally
was
valid.
just talking about, I think it's possible that one of three things, I guess. Either it can be revealed to you in your lifetime through natural occurrences like mission trips. So you naturally come into contact with Christianity. You could have an experience where Jesus comes to you like Paul, or like a near-death experience. I've heard a lot of people converted to Christianity through that. Or I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, invincible ignorance is the third one, but that one's a little bit more.
It's so iffy.
It's hard to judge. I mean, yeah.
Lines like blurry as hell. You can't really say it stops one point, it starts another. Well, that still doesn't like determine. All right, so Christians might have missions that tell Muslims to be Christian, but what if if you just don't accept that because your roots are already so deeply into being Muslim, then is God just gonna punish you for being faithful when He could have put you in a Christian country where you would have been equally as faithful to Him? So is that just
think about it like this. Jesus came in the time of the Jews when they were dominant, especially in the culture that he was in. And he came to spread this new religion that he was starting called Christianity. And the Jews were rooted in their beliefs, but he said, no, you guys are all wrong. You need to follow me, and I can show you exactly why I'm going to do these miracles. And there was this part where the scribes, I don't have the quote written down, but the scribes and the Pharisees came after him and said, by what authority are you forgiving people's sins? Because he was saying to people, your sins are forgiven. It was in Capernaum. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the people who were carrying a paralyzed person. There wasn't any room in the house. They dug through the ceiling and lowered the man in through the ceiling. And he said, your sins are forgiven to the person. The scribes and the Pharisees said, by what authority are you doing these things? Are you forgiving sins? And he said, I can show you, I don't remember exactly what he said, I just read this. But he proved his point by telling the person to get up and walk, and he did. So he demonstrated the truthfulness of his beliefs, and I think that's what missionaries need to do. Obviously, they can't perform miracles in the same way. There have been cases that they have, but I don't know where that fits in because
it's kind of weird to me that miracles have been
because they have been documented in modern culture, but
they've been documented, but you can't invaluably document it. We don't have a video.
I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Because if
well, that's kind of shutting down the argument a little bit.
Because the point of Christianity is to have faith, and you don't have faith if you saw it with your own eyes, and it's recorded. And actually, there are recorded videos, but with deep fakes and everything now, it doesn't matter.
Well, nowadays you can deep fake a lot of stuff.
I've seen videos.
Even if we had something from 2010, it's really hard to edit something.
I've seen videos of
a miracle.
Of this specific one comes to mind of this guy who was preaching on the streets, and he comes up to this guy who's in a wheelchair. And he starts preaching the word of God to him, the Bible, and he starts talking to him about being in a wheelchair. I watched this a long time ago. I don't remember exactly. And the guy starts wiggling his toes, So, I mean, you could say that it was an actor, but there's no way to falsify that.
Yeah, and that's kind of like my problem with Christianity, because a lot of the arguments are pretty like invaluable, and a lot of the arguments are like you can't really say
Infalsifiable.
Yeah, like you can't use the scientific method to say if something did or didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of hard for me to like wrap my head around, because why would God want his logical, because that's our thing. Humans are really logical, and they can also be really emotional, but emotion is also kind of an animal thing. So the thing that separates us from animals is that we're logical. So why would he give his logical...
I heard this argument the other day. Imagine you have a girlfriend and...
Yep, I'm imagining.
Okay. And you ask her if she loves you, and she says yeah. And then you ask her to prove it. How is she going to prove it? So you ask, like she might get offended. You ask God to prove his. You ask God if he loves you, and he gives you this.
Well, I think any.
But you can ask him to prove this, but it's kind of the same.
Okay, I'm a unicorn. I'm a unicorn, right? So say I'm not a unicorn. Am I a unicorn?
No.
Well, I said I'm a unicorn. I'm super offended. Why would you not believe that I'm a unicorn?
That's not the same thing.
If I wanted to, I could make a horn shoot out of my head and prove that I'm a unicorn. But I'm not gonna, because why don't you have faith in me?
That's not the same thing.
Why is it not the same thing?
So, are you thinking of pizza right now?
No.
Prove it.
I wasn't thinking about pizza until you told me to think about pizza. I was thinking about...
So you can't prove it. You can't prove it. You can't prove...
Well, yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? You kind of see my point.
That's kind of disconnected, though.
You can't really prove... And you can't prove God's love for you because... You got your chemicals that you were talking about earlier, oxytocin, right?
Yeah.
But the chemical oxytocin that takes place in your brain is not the same as experiencing love. Right?
I don't know. Have you ever had oxytocin pumped into your brain? So you wouldn't know. I don't know if we've done that yet. I need to look that up.
I think I told you about this before. About that chemical in your brain that that only appears when in two circumstances. One, when you take mushrooms.
Yeah.
And two, like it's found in trace samples from people who just left church.
Okay, so...
So that's... I believe that I don't remember what the chemical is called. I'm sorry for that. But I believe that kind of proves that... So it takes place in your mind, and it comes from your brain, but it only comes from the presence of God. And I don't know what happens if you take shrooms. That's totally different. That's just your brain reacting to that. But
so I think, I'm no neurosurgeon here, but I think a good possible explanation for that is that when the electricity in your brain like formulates in a certain way, it might change the structure of the chemicals to be that like holy brain chemical, right? But so when you take shrooms, since it like overstimulates your brain, it also replicates that.
Well, yeah, so...
But it might just, like, blanket over
drugs.
Others.
Yeah, drugs, they just do stuff to your brain. So, like, if you're smoking, then that'll deprive some of the oxygen to your brain, so you will feel less from your senses, and that feels good to some people. If you're drinking, then that numbs your. I'm trying to see if I can remember. If I'm remembering correctly,
like prefrontal lobe.
Yeah, it numbs your frontal lobe, and it makes it so that you feel less negative emotions. I don't remember, but they do stuff to your brain. Drugs do stuff to your brain. So shrooms just affect that certain part of your brain that also happens to be the location where that certain chemical, I don't remember what it's called, comes from. But the only other place it's present is from people coming out of church. So, what happens in church that happens nowhere else?
Alright. So let's look at this from a different angle. Have we also tested to see if that chemical is released when you eat peanut butter? Because it's not like we've accounted for every single variable out there, because there's just too many.
Well, I'm sure people have tested the certain chemicals in your brain after you eat peanut butter. Like it wasn't.
Well, it doesn't even have to be peanut butter. It could just be like waking up in the morning, putting your
Right,
head,
and I'm sure
putting your head on a concrete wall.
After you wake up in the morning, I'm sure that there have been people who've had their brain chemistry tested after waking up in the morning.
I think
it wasn't like they went through every possible thing someone could do and tested for every single possible chemical in your brain. They tested for all of the brain chemistry after doing certain things, and that
I'm pretty sure that when you take shrooms, it's not exclusively the God chemical that's being released. It's probably a mix of thousands of other chemicals. So it might just be like a blanket thing.
Yeah.
And not just exclusive to
but
God,
I think,
maybe just like the specific experience.
But I think it's important to note that it only happens in church, as far as we know. But
yeah, more research probably has to be conducted.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I just think that
it's an interesting.
We shouldn't disqualify that immediately, because as far as we know, that's the only place that it comes. And I think the only thing that only happens in church, to atheists, it would be nothing. Nothing happens in church that wouldn't have, like, if you're singing worship, then you could just go to a concert and get the same effect, according to atheists. If you're reading the Bible, you could go to or like a reading club or something. Library, yeah, and you get the same effect. A book club, that's the word. I don't know why that term evaded me.
Alright.
You can go to a book club and get the same effect as going to church and getting a sermon on the Bible. But
okay, one question.
For whatever reason, that chemical appears only after you've been in church, and the only thing I can think of is the presence of God.
Okay, so my question on this is, does this only apply for Christian churches, or does it apply with like almost all religions? Because
that's a really good question.
Yeah, I don't know if we tested for that. If you can even do like Buddhism, or if you can even say Buddhism.
Well, Buddhists don't have church.
Yeah, they have temples and where they do prayer and stuff. But if you can have like a similar reaction with Buddhism, and that's just so polarized from Christianity, that would just like completely destroy that argument. I just don't know if we've tested for that yet.
Okay.
So there's definitely fallibility here.
Do you want to look it up?
Sure. Those all look like normal
exclusively
chemicals. Which one?
Try to say exclusively. review.
Yeah. Dopamine. I think that's bullshit. It might be bullshit. Pseudoscience.
Maybe. Yeah.
Too long. It's 10 pages.
We'll skip past abstract.
Yeah. Results here. Conclusion. Story of Job and his ability to worship in response to horrific stressors. Do you see any chemicals?
Scroll up a little bit. There's pictures. Yeah, so your baseline skin.
Yeah. Well, like, brain patterns.
It's pretty different.
Not too much.
Well,
The blue
it's
is a
brain chemistry.
Yeah, brain chemistry. The thing about brain chemistry is that there's trillions upon trillions of combinations that you can't just say that, like, well, obviously prayer is going to be different because it has the capacity to be different and it's a different function, you know? Like, the electricity that has to go through my brain to get on my knees and say some words is a lot different than the one that I need for, like, walking, for example.
But is that the same brain chemistry that would happen if you were to like do anything similar to that, like if you were to do that in a secular setting?
Well, we'd have to measure for that, but
Yeah,
there's
we have to
also
look that up.
there's also like the thought behind it too, because it's not only the physical actions you're taking, but also like the thoughts you're thinking in your head that are saying, "Oh, I'm praying to God right now," and specifically the Christian God. Your brain chemistry would be even slightly different if you were praying to the Muslim version of God.
Based on that article I was seeing, there is actually like health benefits in your
Yeah.
brain after doing
Well,
that.
there's health benefits to a lot of things, so it's not just that God is
Yeah.
super good for you. It's not just that.
I think it is good for you though, and I think it's better than going on a diet.
Are you judging me?
No, but well, I mean, going on a diet, it's not meant to benefit your brain, it's meant to benefit your body.
Yeah.
Off
Off topic.
topic.
Alright, so we were talking about how, like, the God chemical proves that, like, oh, this only happens at church, so that means that something about religion makes your brain...
So, okay, that's where I got it mixed up. It
Yeah.
wasn't a specific chemical, it was
just brain patterns.
It was patterns, right? So, I guess, yeah, I just thought it was interesting that specific patterns only appeared in church.
Well, specific patterns appear for everything that our bodies can possibly do and our brains can think. So, I think that that's kind of just, like...
Not necessarily.
inconclusive.
Like, if you're opening a door versus if you're opening a closet versus if you're opening a fridge, your brain would probably have the same chemical reactions.
The motion's the same, but you're thinking, oh, I'm opening a door to this room.
Right,
I'm
and I'm
opening
sure the
a closet.
chemical patterns, I probably the chemical patterns of going to a concert and a book club are different than going to church.
I think this is all kind of inconclusive, and it doesn't really mean anything that we didn't already know.
Well, I can definitely say on a personal anecdotal note, my mental health has improved a lot since I've been going to church.
Yeah.
And you've seen that too, firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's definitely that. And usually personal arguments aren't the greatest, but especially since we've been friends for a while, you know.
I know that it's helped you, and I'm not denying that it hasn't helped you. I don't believe that religion only leads to bad things. I think that it has a place in society as a way to, like, help people accept death more and, like, just be happier. I don't think that can only be a bad thing. I think it's only a bad thing when we use it to discriminate people and we use it to, like, get angry at people.
I think that that the fact that it's a good thing and the fact that our brain chemistry is different for going to church and, in my opinion, being in the presence of God, I think that because we change based on that, and because our health literally improves by doing those things, I think that that's evidence that it's God's providence of being good to his followers.
Yeah.
And not just a comfort in death.
I mean, I still think it's not really that awful, or it's not really that off to say that, believing in... It's not really that off to say that if you think you might have a chance of going to heaven in life if you're doing good, that's going to make your brain happier. Obviously, it probably will, because it makes you more comforted.
Mm.
So I don't think that that's like specifically because it's religion, but rather it's because like it's a comfort. Like eating mashed potatoes, that's comfort.
Yeah, but I don't think the comfort of it, and it is comforting,
Yeah.
but that's not all it is. I don't think the comfort of it is what alters your brain chemistry. I think it's the presence of God.
Yeah, we're talking about stuff we don't know about. Let's be honest here.
I think that we've reached the end of our limits here.
We can't talk about.
And we've been talking for like 2 hours now. Anyway,
probably 3 at this point.
Probably
it's 11:40 right now.
Is it really?
Yeah, really.
Almost 4.
Yeah, I mean.
All right.
I'm getting tired of looking at your face. I keep like thinking. My brain keeps auto-tuning you to be a lizard. I don't know why. Like your eyes are getting slimmer.
All right. It's
we're done for the day.
probably time to end this. Have a good day, everyone.